So I have created a new React.js project using create React app and I have removed all the boilerplate codes and I have run the code. You can see the project here. So next I'm going to take the BBC login page. Here I'm going to click on BBC account. So at that time you can see that the original login page, here is it. So we are going to create a similar page. So for that, first of all, I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tailwind.css with the create React app and I'm going to click on this link, first link. And here you can see that the steps that we have to do. So we have already created the project. So next I'm going to run this code. So the tailwind will be installed. Okay. So next I'm going to run this second code from here. So at that time you can see that a tailwind file has been added to this project. So next you can see that in this file you can see the structure of the file as like this way. So here we are going to do is I'm going to paste this string from here and to paste it in the content section as like this way. Okay, fine. So next I'm going to do is after that I'm going to copy this and to paste it in the index.css file. Okay, fine. So next I'm going to do is we have already run the project. So next I'm going to copy this section from here and to paste it here. Okay. So as of now, you can see that the changes is not there. So I'm going to close the code editor and I'm going to run the project once more as like this way. So now you can see that here is the changes that is underlined. So from that we can understand that tailwind is working. So here we have already given a class name that is underlined. Okay, fine. So as of now, I am going to remove this class name. So here you can see that there is a picture in the right side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import that image. So for that I'm going to create a new folder that is images and I'm going to import that image. So I have already created this image. Okay, so I'm going to next create a folder components and inside that folder I'm going to create a new component that is sign in.js. And here I'm going to do is to import that image. So before that, I'm going to call that component in this app.js sign in. Then next, I'm going to import that image in this sign in component. That is import front from images slash front.jpg. Okay. So next, I'm going to use the image tag as like this way. And inside this image tag, I'm going to use this source attribute. And inside the source attribute, I'm going to give that image. Okay. So now you can see that the structure of the page as like this way. So we have to bring some changes. So you can see that in the original page, they have divided it into two parts. So I'm going to divide our project or our sign-in page into two parts. Okay, so for that I'm going to do is to use the class name in this main div. And here I'm going to use the grid from the tailwind. That is grid column 2. That means we are dividing the page into two parts, two columns. Left column and right column. Okay, so we have divided that div into two parts, two columns. So next I'm going to do is to use two div, left div and right div. So inside this right div, I'm going to paste this image as like this way. So now you can see that the structure here. So next I'm going to bring some changes. That is, I'm going to give a class that is background color black. That is bg-black. Okay. So now sign in component is black and next I'm going to give a height so we can select a different height as like this way from here. So I'm going to select a height that is H screen. H screen is equivalent to the height 100 VH that we can see when we hover there. That is 100 VH of normal CSS. Okay. So now you can see the structure of sign-in component as like this way. So next I'm going to give a height to this image also. So here I'm going to give the class name that is the same class that is height screen, that is h-screen. Okay, fine. So the right section is completed. So next I'm going to do the left section. So left section contains the different elements such as logo, title, and button, etc. So I'm going to bring these elements or these components into this section. So for that I'm going to do is I'm going to import a logo from my system, or I have already downloaded a logo of VBC. So I'm going to import that into this images folder. And after that, I'm going to import that into this component. So for that, I'm going to rename it as bb's logo.png. Okay. So next, I'm going to import that logo into this component as like this way. Import logo from images slash logo.png. Okay. So next I'm going to do is to use that logo in the image tag. So here in the source attribute as like this way. So now you can see that the structure of our sign in page is like this way. So we have to reduce the size of this logo. So for that I'm going to give a class name here as like this way, and here I'm going to give a height. So we can select the height as like this way. So here you can see that this is the height, it is larger. So I'm going to reduce the height. So now you can see that I think it is fine. Okay. So next I'm going to do is I'm going to use the h1 tag. Inside this h1 tag, I'm going to give a sign in, and here I'm going to give a class name that is going to give text hyphen white. So at that time we can give the color of that text hyphen white. Okay, fine. Next we need to increase the size. So for that I'm going to give as text hyphen. We can select a different size, that is large, small, extra small, 2XL, 3XL, etc. So I'm going to select the 3XL. Text hyphen 3XL. Okay, next I'm going to give a font weight. So I'm going to select a font semi bold. Okay, so this is a structure. I think it is fine. So next I'm going to give a button. So for that I'm going to search as Tailwind CSS button. Okay, so here I'm going to click on this first link, and here you can see that there is a lot of different buttons are there. So from this I'm going to select one of the buttons. So I'm going to select a basic button. Okay, I'm going to select this button completely. So next I'm going to paste that after this sign in as like this way. So here you can see that there is a lot of the classes are given. A few classes are given, that is background color, blue, etc. So here you can see that the structure of this button is like this way. So next I'm going to change the color. So we can change the brightness and darkness or brightness of the color as like this way by giving the number. So I am going to give as blue 600. Okay, so I think it is fine. So next you can see that they have given different classes, that is hover, etc. So actually there is no need of hover. We can change that. Before that I am going to give a height to that button, height and width. Okay, so here I am going to give a height as h hyphen. So now you can see that this is the height. We don't want this much height, so I'm going to reduce the height as like this way. So now you can see that the height of this button, I think it is fine. So next I'm going to give the width. So I am going to give a maximum width. So I'm going to give w hyphen. Okay, so now you can see that this is the structure of button as of now. Okay, fine. So next we have to do is to bring that whole structure into the center. So for that, before that, I'm going to add a text that is sign in now. So here I'm going to give a class name, that is I'm going to give a color. So for giving a color, we have to give text hyphen the color. So I'm going to give blue color, and I'm going to give a number for selecting the brightness or the variation of that particular color. Okay. So I'm going to bring some changes here. Okay. So now you can see that the structure is like this way. I think it is fine. So next I'm going to give a class name that is underline. Okay. So next we have to bring that at the center. So for that I'm going to give a class in the div, the left div. So I'm going to give as class name text center as like this way. So now you can see that the sign in button and the text is centered. So next I'm going to give a margin left to this logo for making it align with the other elements. I'm going to increase the margin left as like this way. Okay, fine. So next I'm going to give a margin top also. Okay, I'm going to increase the margin top. Okay, so as of now it is fine. So next I'm going to give a margin top to the each component, that is the sign in, and for the button I'm going to increase the margin top. Then I am giving a margin top for the sign in now text. Okay, so I think it is fine. Okay, fine. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, here you can see that this is a structure. So next I'm going to give a functionality for this button. So before that I'm going to do is to change the name of that button to sign in. Okay, so here I'm going to, we can see that here is sign in as the name of the button. So I'm going to give the sign in here as like this way, sign in. So now you can see that the structure of the button as like this way. Okay, fine. So next I'm going to give the functionality for that button. So for that I'm going to use the firebase authentication. So I'm going to select the or search for firebase, and here I'm going to click on this first link. And next I'm going to do is to click on this get started, and after that I'm going to click on the add project button. So by clicking add project button, we can create a new project by giving the name of the project. So I'm going to give the name of the project as BBC clone. And next I'm going to click on continue, and I'm going to disable this analytics section, and I'm going to click on create project. So now the new project has been created, and I'm going to click on continue again. So now you can see that we will be redirected to the console of the project. Here you can see there is three icons. So from that I'm going to select web icon. So here as a first step, we have to register the app. So for that I'm going to give the name of the app as BBC clone itself. Then next I'm going to click on the register app. So now you can see that as a second step, we have to install the Firebase into our project. So as we are using as I am using npm, I'm going to copy this command and to paste it in the new terminal and to run that command. Okay. So at that time you can see that the Firebase will be installed into our project. Okay. So now you can see that Firebase has been installed into our project. We can see that in the package.json. So next, Next, I'm going to copy this complete code from there, and I'm going to create a new folder that is Firebase. And here I'm going to create a new file that is setup.js. And inside this setup.js file, I'm going to paste that code. So here I am going to remove these commands as like this way for make it more clear. So here you can see that there is a Firebase config which contains the API key, auth domain, project ID, etc. So we don't want to bring any changes to this Firebase config. So for that I'm going to that I'm going to minimize this Firebase config. Okay. So next you can see that they have imported or initialized this project by initialize app from Firebase app. Okay. So I'm going to do this. We have to do the first thing, that is we have to import a function from the Firebase auth as like this way. So before that, I'm going to do is I'm going to take the document, and here I am going to click on this continue to console button. Then here in the console you can see that in the left side there is a build button. It contains authentication, database, etc. So I am going to click on authentication. Then next I am going to click on the get started button. So at that time you can see that this section here we need to add the provider. So for that I am going to click on this button add new provider. So at that time you can see that here from this list we can select a provider. So I am going to select the Google, and I am going to click on enable, select the Gmail ID, and I am going to click on the save button. So now you can see that the Google is enabled. Okay. So next I am going to do is to import the function that is get auth from Firebase auth as a first function. Then next we have to import the Google auth provider as a second function, as like this way. So we have imported the two function. Okay, so next I'm going to define a variable. So I'm going to give the name of the variable as auth. Then I'm going to assign the get auth inside the or to that auth. Then next step that we have to do is to pass this app as an argument. So usually when we are using this authentication or a database in from the Firebase, we have to do this step. That is, we have to give app as an argument into that function that we have imported. Next, I am going to export this variable for using it in other files. Then after that, I am going to defining a variable for the Google provider, Google auth provider function. So I have given it as Google provider, and I'm going to assign it as new Google provider, and we have to pass that app inside this Google auth provider as an argument. So setup.js file is completed. So I'm going to take the sign or sign in component. Here I'm going to define a new function. So I'm going to give the name of the function as Google sign in as as an arrow function. Okay. So next I'm going to import a function from the Firebase auth again. So here the name of the function that we have to import from Firebase auth is sign in with the pop-up. Okay. So I'm going to use the sign in with the pop-up function inside this Google sign in function as like this way. Next, I'm going to give the async await and also try catch console.error, and I'm going to pass this sign in with the pop-up inside this try. Okay, fine. So next I'm going to do is to give two arguments into this sign in with the pop-up function. So the first argument is auth and second argument is Google provider. We have already defined that auth and Google provider in the setup.js file. Okay. So from there we have to import that into this into this sign in component. Okay. So I'm going to import that auth and Google provider as like this way from Firebase slash setup.js file. Okay. So we have imported and we have given as arguments. Then next I'm going to call this Google sign in function in the on click of the button sign in. So next I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the sign in button. At that time you can see that a pop-up will be arrived From there, we have to select the Google account. So I am going to select this Google account. So now you can see that the user is logged in. So for checking that, from here, we can see the details of the user who is logged in, that is mail ID and other details. So for checking that in our project, we will get the details from this auth that we have imported. So I'm going to log that auth in the console. So you can see that in the console, as like this way, the console contains the auth. Okay, this auth contains a property called current user. Okay, that current user contains the email ID and also email is verified. That is, email verified is true. Okay, so from that we can understand the user is logged in. So next I'm going to do is to create the navbar of our BBC clone. So for that I'm going to take the BBC news and from here I am going to click on the BBC homepage. So now you can see that here is the navbar. So navbar contains logo, sign in button, menus, search bar, etc. So for that, first of all, I'm going to do is to create a new component that is navbar, navbar.js. Then after that, I'm going to do is here I'm going to give the navbar and I'm going to call this navbar in this app.js component. So I have commented this sign in component and I'm calling navbar component here. Okay, so now you can see that here is the navbar. So next I'm going to do is here you can see that when we take this original navbar, they have divided it into three parts. The first part contains logo, sign-in button, and second part contains the menus such as home, sport, travel, etc. And the third part contains the search bar. Okay, so I'm going to divide this our navbar into three parts. So for that, I'm going to do is to give a class name into this div, the main div. Inside that class name, I'm going to use the grid from Tailwind. That is grid column 3. That means we are dividing this navbar into three parts, three columns. So each column I'm going to give each div, and I'm going to use three div as like this way. Okay. So next I'm going to do is in the first div I'm going to give the logo of the BBC News. So here you can see that this is logo. So I'm going to import that logo to this component also. We have already imported in this images folder. Okay, images slash logo.png. So I'm going to use that in the image tag. So inside this image tag, I'm going to use the source attribute, and inside the source attribute, I'm going to use the logo as like this way. So now you can see that the logo here. So in the original navbar, you can see that background color is black. So I'm going to change the background color of this navbar, navbar of our clone. So for that, I'm going to do is to give the class name in this main div that is background bg-black. So at that time, you can see that the background color has changed to black. The next I'm going to reduce is the size of this logo. So for that I'm going to give a class name in this image tag here as like this way, and here I'm going to give the height as 10. Okay, so we can give height as like this way. So now you can see that it is as like similar to the structure of the original navbar. Okay, fine. So next I'm going to do is to implement this sign in button. Okay, so for that I'm going to do is I'm going to import an image from this images folder. So this is the image that I'm going to use for the sign in icon. So I'm going to import that image into this navbar component as like this way. So now you can see that I am going to use that image in this button as like this way. Inside this image tag, I'm going to use that user image. So now you can see that the structure as like this way. So now I'm going to give a class name for this image tag to reduces the size of that image. So here I'm going to give the height. That is, I'm going to give a height for about okay. So this is the structure as of now. So I am going to give here the flex in this button. So at that time you can see that how it looks. Okay. So next I'm going to give a hover effect. So here in this button I am going to give the hover hyphen colon border. So I'm going to give here the color blue. Here I am going to give a border first, then I am going to give border hyphen blue. Okay. So this is the structure. Next, I am going to give a padding for this button. So I'm going to give padding 2. So now you can see that the structure of the sign in command as like this way, or sign in button as like this way. So here I'm going to give a border right, or I am going to give as hover border white, simply white as like this way. So now you can see that this is the structure as of now. Okay, fine. So next you can see that I'm going to increase the width of this button signing. Okay, so for that I'm going to do is I'm going to give here the width in this class name of the button as like this way. So now you can see that the width has been increased. Okay, fine. So next I'm going to give a padding commonly. So in the left div or the main div, I'm going to give a padding for about 2. So at that time you can see that the structure as like this. Okay, so fine. It is similar. So next you can see that as a second part, you can see the menus, home, sport, etc. So I'm going to give the menus. So for that I'm going to use the button in the second div as like this way. So I'm going to give a 8 button for 8 menus. Okay. So first here I am going to give as home. Then you can see that home, sport, reel. So here I'm going to give as reel. Then next you can see work life, travel, future, culture, etc. So I'm going to give work life, travel, future, culture. Okay, fine. So after that I'm going to give a color commonly for the main div, that is text white. So at that time you can see the menus is listed here as like this way. Okay, fine. So next I'm going to do is to give a flex here. So in the second div I am going to give, I have given a class name and I have given this child flex. So this is a structure. So next I'm going to give class name for the button. So I'm going to give the class name, that is margin left. So I'm going to give the same class name for the each button or for all buttons as like this way. So now you can see that this is the structure of our menu section or the middle section of the navbar. Okay. So I'm going to increase the margin left to 4 for all the buttons. Okay. So next I'm going to give a style, that is I'm going to give a font weight. So here I'm going to give font weight, that is font hyphen semi bold, and Next, I'm going to do here. You can see that this is a structure of our navbar. Then next, I'm going to reduce the size of the each button. So I'm going to give as text small. So this is a structure. So I'm going to give the style to all of the button. So I'm going to copy this style and paste it to all the buttons as like this way. So now you can see the structure. Okay, fine. So next I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the margin left to 7. So I think it is better. So I'm going to give all margin left to 7 for the buttons. Okay, fine. Okay. Then I'm going to remove this margin left of the first button, that is home button, home menu. Okay, fine. So next you can see that here is a search bar at the third div. So when I click the search bar, you can see that we will be redirected to a page. So I am going to do is to use a button element for that search bar. So here I am going to give a search BBC. And next I'm going to do is I'm going to give a class name for this third div as flex. So this is a structure. And here I'm going to give a class name for the button, that is margin left. Okay, fine. The next I'm going to do is to import an image into this. So for that I'm going to use the image tag as like this way. And inside this image tag I'm going to use the source attribute. And next I'm going to import the image of lens. So this is the image that I'm going to import. So I'm importing into the images folder. Next I'm going to import that into the, before that I'm going to rename it as lens, and I'm going to import it into the navbar component as like this way. Import the lens from images slash lens.png. So next I'm going to use that in the source attribute as like this way. So here is a structure. So I'm going to give some style. So I'm going to give the class name in this image tag. Then after that I'm going to give a style to this button, that is flex. Okay. So next I'm going to give the style. So I'm going to give the padding. Okay, fine. Then I'm going to reduce the size of this lens image. Okay.